Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to a Monday edition of the Garden Report. Back in Boston here after our flight back from Orlando after last night's thriller game for both teams here. Going down the wire again, tie game late, and the Celtics pull it out behind a 37-point game from Jason Tatum. Mason Williams is here from SI to help us break it all down. And I don't know. Where do you want to start with this one, Mason? This one had a lot of big moments, a lot of great turns. Every time the Celtics built like a 6 to 8 point lead in this one, the Magic strung together 3-4 possessions to push back and pull within a possession or tie it like they did late. This was, I'd say, their best offensive performance in this series. And they've taken advantage the last 2 games of Jrue Holiday's absence to be able to break free a little bit and get their offensive rating, I think, up to like 108, which in this series matters.
Right.
So they've been better, but they're down 3-1 now and don't seem to have the offense consistently enough to be able to break through with one of these runs and build a lead and be able to hold it late. Even that win they got in game 3 went right down the last possession, the last 0.3 seconds of them trying to hold that one out. So on game 4, where's your mind go first?
Well, first of all, Bobby, I appreciate you having me on. This is a lot of fun. So, my mind goes a lot of different places. It feels like, in a way, we've almost watched, the same game 4 times in this series so far. Where
Yeah, exactly.
where it's been super tight in the first half, and really outside of that game 3 run to end the first half from Boston, it felt like this game is tied through 24 minutes. And finally, last night, the third quarter was even. Before last night, before game 4, it had been a story of who was going to win the third quarter. And that has been one of the Magic's Achilles heels all season long. First 2 games in Boston, Celtics come out of the halftime locker room. They thump the Magic, and it never really gets close again down the stretch. Game 3, the Magic do what they do. They shut down Boston out of the half. That was probably one of the weirdest offensive quarters I've seen maybe ever from this Celtics team this year, at least. I'm sure you guys talked about that a
Worst
ton.
since 2021, I believe.
Yeah. So what the Magic did in that third quarter in game 3 was something I've not seen in a long time. And it's in the same sense, something we've not seen from Boston in a long time. And then in game 4, we finally got a game that was like still even after 3 quarters, not just 2. And it felt like this was the game that kind of cemented that Boston, top to bottom, is still a level or 2 above a team like Orlando, and especially when Orlando is dealing with season-ending injuries to some of their top guys. Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner have done a ton for this team throughout the year. They've raised it up another level even in this series, it seems like. But at the same time, when you're dealing with a team like Boston that has been there before, has done that, and has the championship pedigree, the medal in those moments to when the game is tied 91-91 with 4.5 minutes to play, 4.25 minutes to play, can still deal a knockout blow when it felt like the Magic had been putting everything they had into every play just to keep it close. And I even go back to that game 3 third quarter where it felt like all of that energy that the Magic mustered in the third quarter to do what they did to Boston, they do all of that and they look up and it's a 3-point game heading into the fourth quarter. And it was something that just, it feels like the Magic had to push so much into these 2 home games to try and even this series up. And with game 4, Boston was kind of like, it felt like they kind of cemented themselves as being, still the championship team that a lot of people have come to know them to be, and kind of showed why the Magic probably won't make it out of this series, because in the end, they didn't have the offense at the end to keep up. Boston had too many different options to go. Jason Tatum was fantastic. and it's a 3-1 series heading back to Boston because of it.
Yeah, and so many plots in this series so far. You said
Right.
your mind went a million different places. I can probably rattle off 10 things right now to talk about with this series. And Tatum's performance last game, for most of this series, I think has been pretty outstanding. Aside from the game 2 injury, missed that game, and then the 37 last night. I think major factor in that game. You can go to the scuffles that we've seen in pretty much every single game at this point, and the back and forth of the physicality in this series. Kristaps Porzingis, a massive disappointment here. Got back on his feet a little bit last game. He obviously had a moment in game 2 with the blood coming off the floor. You can go to that as well. Paolo, a real moment for Paolo in this series. Now, Celtics have forced him to shoot, and he's done it, and he's hit big ones throughout this series. I think the playmaking leap from him into this postseason has been something to watch and something to take note of, even with a few too many turnovers. He's missed some tough free throws in this series, too, at 22 with 34. But his ability to lead that offense when not too many other players have gotten going here, Franz Wagner a little bit in the Orlando games, but he's had to pretty much carry the weight of this offense almost on his own, and he's done a pretty good
Yeah.
job with his out of this world. KCP stuff that continued. Go down the line here. The benches have been interesting to me a little bit in this series. Pritchard's become non-factor the last 2 games almost after having a great start to this series. Awesome Al Horford performance, which it feels like you have to have in
Yeah.
every playoff series at this point. Jamahl Mosley as a character in this series, I think, really starting to become a lot more relevant with, some of the stuff he's saying and, even the on-court moments from him. He's out there for one of those scuffles. He's been out there for a couple of those scuffles, it feels like. Injuries to Boston, injuries to Orlando that were plots going into the series. And it's been great. It's been great
It has
basketball
been.
played at a 90 pace, which is just so different from what we're used to watching across the NBA. I know most of the playoffs have been down in pace a little bit, but this one's been next level. I could talk about this series all day. We're going to try to fit this show into 30 minutes here, but on all those things, where do you want to go next?
I would go back to what really caught my eye was the Porzingis stuff, especially last night. It felt like, and I think you even made a note of it, the way he was killing the Magic in the pick and roll situations in the first half was something that we've not seen from him in this series. And when the Magic do their switching 1 through 5, a lot of times it ends up with Gary Harris or Corey Joseph or Anthony Black on him, in kind of at that top of the key free throw line area, and it seemed like, the Magic were just kind of daring him to settle for these jumpers. But last night he was really I felt like a threat in the pick and roll as the roll man heading straight to the rim. I believe he had 10 points before he hit his first 3 of the series last night. And really he got that 3 by threatening to roll towards the rim and then stepped back and hit one of his, deep range threes from like 28, 29 feet, really almost above the break. Um, I thought he was a massive factor last night, and it's the performances like that when outside of the Tatums, the Browns, even Derek White, which we've come to know as a guy that's a playoff riser, almost, especially in this series. It seems like he's had so many big shots, and has really helped the Boston backcourt completely outplay the Magic backcourt in this series. I think that's something else that's really been a storyline really throughout the entire year for the Magic is what can they get from their guards. Uh, Playing a team like Boston that, especially when Drew was available the first 2 games, having Derek White do what he does. And then Peyton Pritchard has been awesome defensively, I think, even though the scoring necessarily hasn't been there the last couple of games. He's played really physical, body up defense and has made some things tough when, especially, he gets switched on to a Paolo or a Franz, where it's not just like a bully ball situation where it sometimes is when Paolo gets those smaller matchups on him. The Drew Holiday stuff, I think, has kind of given this series a little bit extra length for the Magic just because of kind of going back to the guard point. Like they don't necessarily have a whole lot of ball handling outside of the 2 forwards. And when Drew is out there on the perimeter, he can muck it up with anybody. He was
He's
awesome
been
on
the
Paolo
primary
in
guy
those
on
2
Paolo,
games.
too.
Yeah, he was awesome on Paolo in those first 2 games. So, and obviously a guy like Paolo, who it feels weird to say we're saying obviously him being a playoff performer already in just his third year, his second playoffs, but he's shown that really like this is a backup from what he did last year, coming out against the Cleveland Cavaliers in that series. There's like you said, I think this series has been fascinating. It has been absolutely no walk in the park for for the Celtics. I think it's going to pay dividends for the Magic in the long run, especially for Paolo and Franz, and I think it will also clear up any lingering. I think it should probably also clear up any lingering thoughts or questions of what the Magic should do to surround them with some more viable options, scoring wise, playmaking wise, this offseason, to really capitalize on them before they get too expensive to do so and build around them.
Yeah, there are some good big picture discussions on the Magic side of this one we can get to a little later. I want to get to what their future is looking like here as well. But I want to give a shout out to our awesome sponsor here to start the week before another great week of coverage here on CLNS Media. And it is game time. And of course, there is a big game in Boston tomorrow night, Celtics Magic Game 5. Probably a tough ticket, probably going to be a great atmosphere after the continued scuffles. And I think that's what I want to talk about next, coming out of that last game.
For
They
sure.
make getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard to get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down closer it gets to tip off. I know that for a fact, using it over the years. With killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, my favorite feature, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. Pick out any specific games you'd love to attend, and you got great deals on all of them. NBA tickets are available right now over there. You got baseball going as well, hockey playoffs rolling as well. None of that in Boston, but anywhere you want to go, Game Time has your seats, and it's great for the concerts as well, especially that panoramic view of your seats. I'm looking forward to some summer concerts, and they got the last minute deals on all those as well as the basketball playoffs. 60% off buying last minute deals, up to 60% on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Mention the zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose your seats. All in pricing lets you know what you're going to pay ahead of time, and you get the panoramic view of your seat before you buy. And the lowest price guarantee says Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered also by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So go over to Game Time right now, download the app, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase over there. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase over there. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So let's get to those hostilities that continued here in this one. It was a check by Wendell Carter on Derek White that got things going there midway through this game. Big scuffle ensued. Tatum wasn't happy. Horford was going at Carter a little bit there, and Mosley's out there trying to talk down the refs. It ended up being a common foul. It looked like there was some discussion between Tatum and Mosley as well. Those two have a relationship, and Tatum, toned things down a little bit after that moment after the game there. But interesting from my view, seeing Mosley out there in the mix a couple of times, seeing Tatum, who's usually not in that position, get into the mix now at this point in the series. He also got hit hard by Anthony Black later in this game and seemed to aggravate that wrist injury that sparked this whole thing off in game one here. And we've had a scuffle every game. If that was a flagrant, we've had a flagrant every game called in this series. If you love that side of things, and who doesn't, this series has had it for you.
Right. Yeah. It's been almost like a WWE subplot in this series of there's been the on-court stuff, but then there's everything else that's going on between the whistles as well. I think it's just been it's been kind of a boiling over almost of some of the Magic's frustrations with this year. And also just the fact that the Magic and Celtics have played each other really close the last couple of seasons before this one. And yeah, I kind of subscribe to the theory that if the Magic were healthier throughout this year, this probably isn't a first round series either. This is maybe a second round series between a 1 and a 4 seed or a 2 and a 3, something along those lines. At least where there's maybe not so much of the first round angst that maybe comes with a young team like the Magic as well in a situation like this. But yeah, no, this is just kind of who they are in a sense. The flagrant uptick is a bit out of character. I think some of the fouls
Did
have
they
been
commit a
hard.
lot of flagrants during the year?
They didn't commit a ton of flagrants throughout the year, but and it's kind of hard to remember all of them. But at the same time, I think throughout the year, maybe the officials just kind of understood that they were going to be a little bit handsier on defense, that they were going to, have their nights where they were bodying up guys a little bit more often. And especially when they were shorthanded in some of those matchups, like that's what they relied on a ton. And obviously, I think going into this series, they probably recognized that a team like Boston, they were going to have to muddy it up. They were going to have to muck it up, make it ugly, drag them through the mud to make it a series. And I think that's just what's happened. I don't think there's any necessary malintent. Are the fouls hard? Yes, they're hard. But speaking from the Magic's perspective, um, we talk to them, we ask them, and whether they're just saying the wrong or saying the right things. Excuse me, whether they're just saying the right things in some moments, or they actually mean it, taking their words for their value. They're not out there trying to hurt anybody. They're not out there trying to make this series something it isn't. They just have kind of upped the ante a little bit in the postseason, in the playoffs. I think partially because of what they subscribe to playing style wise, defensively, and then also kind of understanding the matchup that they have in this series.
Yeah, and when you look at the fouls here, the Magic were gonna foul coming into this series. You knew that, leading the league in fouls, I believe, coming into this, sent opposing teams to the free throw line quite a bit during the year. Celtics at 69 through the 4 games so far. Magic at where the Magic in this? They have 46. Oh no, 87. So 87 to 69 in fouls. Free throws now are at 105 Boston, 118, or I'm screwing this all up. 81 Orlando. So 81 Orlando in free throws, 105 in Boston. That's been the biggest surprise to me because the Magic get to the free throw line a ton as well. So an interesting discussion throughout this series. Obviously, Celtics have taken exception at times to how the Magic have fouled them. And Mosley's mentioned it before the first 2 games in more subtle ways, but after last night's game, which the total ended up being throwing around way too many numbers right now.
I think it was like 32-20 on the free throw count, but it was skewed at the end because they were playing the foul game when, the game was a little bit decided.
Yep, you got it. 32-20. And again, Magic have missed some. He mentioned that as well. Celtics went 30 of 32 at the line in this game, which is so important. Tatum, especially 14 of 14. But Mosley did comment on the officiating after the game. Here's what he said.
Foul count.
Ooh.
But they shot 30 of 32. How would you describe the way your team defended tonight and the amount of free throws?
How many free throws do you think came down on the backstretch after, like, we had to foul? What do you think it was about 26 total, maybe? It's too many. Foul a three-point shooter. Again, we were attacking the basket the exact same way. Now we've got to knock them down when we get there. That's a big portion of it. We had to understand that the whistle was gonna head in their direction after, what's been said. So we have to continue to just be smart there, hold our ground, get positioning earlier, and make sure we show our hands.
I just want to clarify something that you had said a couple of minutes ago about the foul situation. I don't know. I don't want to mishear anything.
No,
but did you say that you thought that the calls may go Boston's way because of the talk leading into the game? Is that what you
Well,
meant?
understandably, I mean, we talk about physical play, and that's in the way in which we played. And there was, you talk about the back and forth battle. I think our ability, and I always look at our ability to attack the rim. You talk about us going to there 34 times, us going there 36 times, them 34 times, them shooting, let's just say 26 free throws before the backstretch. You look at those margins, and it's very similar attacks, but it's not the same foul count.
So what did you make of that?
I think the most important line that Mosley's comments probably by the end, especially the first response, kind of contradict is that heading into the final 4 minutes of the game, I think the fouls were 18-17. I don't have it right in front of me, but the game was almost dead even through 4 minutes or with 4 minutes to go. Whether it was fouls being even, I think free throws were pretty similar at that count at that moment. And then Tatum gets fouled on a 3-pointer, which it was a foul. And he
Challenged
thinks
it
all
as
those
well, right?
challenged it as well, probably just as a save face. Hey, we get use it or lose it challenge. Just see what happens there. But so I think before that it was the 23. Tatum hits all three of those, makes it a 9-point game with 2 minutes to go. They start fouling, and then there's 6 more free throws, I think, on the end with the 3 more intentional fouls. So really, that skews it at the end. And honestly, as you mentioned earlier, like one of the key things to watch this series was how often the Magic foul and how little Boston fouls, and how
And that's been
how
a big win
often
for Boston.
it has been, and how often Orlando puts teams on the free throw line, but the way they mitigated it throughout the regular season was they were going to get to the free throw line themselves. And Boston has been very disciplined defensively in this series. They've been the much better team about defending without fouling, and that's led to a lot of the Magic struggles because when they have those 4 and 5 minute lulls where it seems like they have one a game where they don't hit they miss all their field goals in that stretch. Typically in the regular season, when that would happen, the way they would snap out of it was not by hitting jump shots. That's not what this team does. It was getting to the free throw line and earning some with the clock stopped. So that's not happened this series, and that's a credit to Boston. That's a credit to their defensive discipline. And I think it also kind of goes back to the fact that the Magic have really 2 guys who they can consistently put on the floor to trust defensively, in Paolo and Franz, and know that they have the ability to get to the rim. Cole Anthony is the other guy for the Magic, really, that's healthy on this roster that can get downhill, get to the rim. But defensively, he has struggled a lot in this series,
They haven't
and
been able to play him.
they haven't been able to keep him on the floor. He got 2 minutes yesterday. He logged 2 quick fouls in that time. The switching has been rough with him, kind of going back to the Porzingis point from earlier, but he's just been kind of eaten alive on defense in some of the situations that Boston's able to get him in, and they can't keep him on the floor for more than a few minutes at a time, which has been another issue all year for this team because they lack the scoring outside of Paolo and Franz a lot, and Cole can do that. He's had his moments throughout this year, but in a playoff series like this, Boston's done a really good job of essentially playing him off the floor and playing him out of the rotation. And so I think, to go back to the fouling thing, it's who the Magic have been all year. They've accepted that they're going to be physical, that they're gonna send teams to the line. And just the only aspect of it that they haven't got back in return is they haven't been able to cover it with their own free throw differential. And then killed them last night to also miss 6 when they got there. So Paolo and Franz, they took a lot of those because, again, they're some of the only guys that can get there. They've got a lot of weight on their shoulders. I'm sure they're dealing with some fatigue at this point in this series because of how much they have to do. And I think it's just kind of caught up to them a little bit, honestly.
Yeah, and that'll be a factor going into tomorrow. I think you did see that at the end of this game, especially after the Tatum foul by Paolo and Tatum there, which I believe was his 5th at that point. Things
Yeah.
just kind of tailed off for the Magic at that point. And again, thought it was their best offensive performance to that point. Wasn't great down the stretch after that one, and some jump shots, some settled plays. I didn't love one of Wagner's threes down the stretch there, but the offense was much better for them in this game. When it comes to the foul thing, and the chat knows I'm not a big Boston homer. I haven't loved the Magic fouls at points in this series, especially the Anthony one. I did think there was a case for a flagrant 2 there, the one that injured Jalen. The KCP thing in real time didn't seem like a huge deal to me, but you look back, there is an arm pull at the end there, and I've seen a handful of those in this series, pretty consistently. So I haven't loved that from the Magic. I like the physical style. I like what Mosley's been able to do with that group defensively. And it's obviously part of how they're closing the gap in this game is just how, rough and tumble they've played here. And, even Joe Mazzulla said it hasn't crossed the line. I think he said to NBC specifically, no one's gotten arrested, right? And I think,
I did see that
both
clip. That was
sides,
funny.
there were some tensions early in the series. Horford sparked a lot of them with his comments. He scaled it back. KCP, when I talked to him after game one, was willing to, be a lot more, I think defensive about his play style. But even he and Cole Anthony, who had a pretty a quote that caught some, attention after that first game, he scaled things back. Jalen said what he said after that game, and the Magic really didn't respond. And then, it surprised me with Mosley here because going into this game, a couple people asked him, including myself, about what he thought about the Celtics calling them out, and he just kind of brushed it off. And then after the game, he goes back to it and says, "You knew with what they said that they were going to get some calls down the stretch here." So this is always a give and take with these series. Joe hasn't gone there, but Jalen did, as we mentioned. And then you always expect a coach on the opposite side of that to respond and try to get some calls in his favor, especially going into a game 5 on the road here. So it's courtesy in a way. But given the way that he's approached a lot of that stuff in the series to this point, and again, he did mention it before a few games more subtly, I was surprised that he went there to the degree that he did after this game. And we'll see if it works. It's always a card to play in these series. They need it, down a couple of guys and outgunned in this series and down 3-1 now. But I don't feel great, like you said, with the fatigue factor here, especially, and going into a Garden that's just going to be jumping on Tuesday night. I don't feel great about their chances here.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And something has to be said too for the fact that the Magic players commented last night that there's not going to be a whole lot of Magic support in the building.
Yeah, I heard Paolo say that.
If at all, in TD Garden tomorrow night. And there were times when throughout these 2 games, games 3 and 4 in Orlando, where it almost sounded like a neutral site, like a March Madness game, where Boston fans were loud, they were proud. It always happens when Boston comes down here, when Boston comes into town, and it was even more so in the playoffs. It felt like so. Obviously the Magic still had a home court advantage, but it's not like what the Celtics will have Tuesday night. And I think these last 2 games for the Magic were so emotionally charged that probably goes into why everything with the physicality and the comments afterwards about the officiating and everything, like I'm sure all of that factors into it somehow. But I ultimately think like the Magic just put so much, almost emptied the tank probably in these last 2 games trying to even a series up, just knowing the situation that they're facing. And now they've got 3 straight elimination games if they're to avoid being a first round exit again, and that is against this Boston team. That is about as steep a hill as you could climb, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond, but it wouldn't shock me if we kind of find out early in the game what the way it's going to be dictated. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and it was a whole different effort up and down the lineup, especially. I thought Anthony Black played better in the Orlando games. You got a little more from Isaac at points. I thought Corey Joseph played better in that last game as well after he wasn't a big factor in the Boston games. I thought Wendell Carter's shown well at points in this series here, especially on the home side of things. So they got some role players to show up. KCP, who really struggled to start this series, shot 2 of 4 from 3 in the last game there. Does that stuff carry over to Boston? Again, it's just been such an uphill battle for them to even score 100. And that puts a lower ceiling on what the Celtics need to get to here in this game. And the one thing I'll say, and we talk about the series being a test for Boston or for Orlando, and seeing how they stack up against a champion. But, it's been a test for Boston as well. And, the one thing I want to get to before we get out of here is that 3-point stuff. Want to give a shout out to another one of our sponsors here first, though, LinkedIn Jobs. And, if you're busy, you don't always have time to go out there and search for great candidates for your job, for your small business especially. So pass it over to LinkedIn Jobs and let them handle it. They do a great job with that. And where's my lower third here? Got to tell the people about LinkedIn Jobs. Here we go. LinkedIn.com/garden is where you want to go for this. And again, if you're a small business owner, don't have the luxury of clocking out early, business is on your mind 24/7. So when you're hiring, you need a partner that grinds just as hard as you do. And that partner is LinkedIn Jobs. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. And they make it easy to post your job for free. It's the big part. Share it with your network and get qualified candidates that you can manage all in one place. You can post your job for free, either that or pay to promote. Promote jobs get 3 times more as qualified candidates. At the end of the day, the most important thing to your small business is the quality of those candidates. And with LinkedIn, you can feel confident you're getting the best. According to LinkedIn data, 72% of small businesses using LinkedIn say that LinkedIn helps them find higher quality candidates. You can put a hiring frame in your profile picture to get twice as many qualified candidates. So find out why more than 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring today. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/garden. That's linkedin.com/garden to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And it is the playoff time in basketball right now, and there's no better time to play Prize Picks. Head over there and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play $5 over on Prize Picks. All the stars are out. You got Jason Tatum playing right now. You got Paolo out there tomorrow, who's put up some big numbers in this series. And Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your season all season long on Prize Picks, including the postseason. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup this postseason, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick of more or less for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. And you can take your playoff hot takes and turn them into tickets to basketball's championship series, starting with the play-in round. Every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you to the Take 2 ticket sweepstakes, which could get you in a +1, a VIP trip to the championship. So again, best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions and sign up today. And again, you'll get $50 when you play $5 over on Prize Picks with that code CLNS. Again, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. Prize Picks, run your game. So the most impressive thing that the Magic have done by far, Mason, that's made this a series, despite the free throw stuff we've talked about, is that 3-point defense. And wow, I didn't know if it would hold up, but it's held up in every single game to this point. You mentioned the Porzingis stat. Hauser didn't hit a 3 until game 4. Pritchard's been held in check these last handful of games. And yes, it's come at a cost of a couple big Tatum Brown breakout stretches, but they've mostly held their own against those guys too, holding them below their efficiency standards out there. It's pretty amazing what the Magic have done defensively in this series. And I've said it a couple times, win or lose in game 5 here, this is going to be a great test for Boston, heading into some of the better defensive teams they might see down the line, some teams that might try to play them like Orlando does. And really, we're all thinking about the Thunder eventually here. And I think there's some similarities to the way they play defense. Obviously, the number 1 defense, Orlando number 2 here. How have they been so effective on Boston?
I think a lot of it goes down to personnel. Honestly, they have so much size. They have so much perimeter acumen on the defense that they just feel comfortable switching 1 through 5. And also some of the switching stuff where we talked about where Porzingis gets those matchups, they're also leaving those guys one-on-one because they are scared to help off of a shooter, and they would rather live with Porzingis 2 or a drive to the rim than help off, leave an open shooter, or force rotations and get themselves out of line. So I think a lot of that has kind of gone into the way the Magic have defended this series, but also it's something that they've just done all season long. And part of it is the pace that they play at. They played at one of the slowest paces in the league. It's something where they've taken 3-point attempts away from teams all season long, and it's been helpful to them because were also, as everybody knows, they were the worst 3-point shooting team in the league throughout the year. So they kind of minimized their own weakness by maximizing their own strength throughout the regular season. And obviously the yin and yang of one of the yin and yangs of this series, we talk about the free throws, we talk about the foul count, all that kind of stuff. It was also the 3-point attempts versus the 3-point volume that Orlando allows. And I think Orlando has far and away won that category, that aspect of this series so far. Obviously, I think the talent that Boston has kind of, mitigated a little bit of that, because they're able to really kind of, overcome that with a really good Brown game or a really good Tatum game. We've seen both in the series so far.
Or the just little extra sprinkle of white points like
Just
last game.
Yeah, just the little extra Derek White or the 20 from Porzingis here and there.
And then when
Getting
Holiday was in there, that was a real separating factor for them. I mean, there's a whole
right.
different series when you mentioned, and he'll be out tomorrow night, which is an important factor going into that last game, potential last game in this series. They were plus 19 with him on the floor, and I think it's just plus 4 with him off the floor in this series. So that's another separating factor when you think about the talent and the depth, and especially the guard mismatch in this series.
Yeah.
That's just been massive. I mean, no position's been a bigger discrepancy than that one on either side.
Yeah, and then you talk about Horford being the defensive anchor he was yesterday. The blocks that he had, they were like game-changing plays that he had, and he's somebody that normally comes off the bench, but when he's inserted into the starting lineup, and Boston's bench gets a little bit thinner, like it seems to not can't matter as much because of how impactful Horford is, even when he's not scoring. So it all just kind of adds up in the aggregate of everybody else outside of Tatum and Brown. And when White gets his points, and Hauser knocks down a couple of threes, or Porzingis gets going, when Holiday was in, as you mentioned, it was a completely different series. But when Horford does what he does defensively, it just puts so much stress on a team like the Magic, offensively, to keep up with that. But when going back to the 3-point defense, like that's just something that the Magic have done all season long. They feel comfortable switching size onto the perimeter. It takes away a lot of teams' looks at that, and it becomes very glaring when somebody is able to beat that. And Boston, you would figure, is the team most well equipped to do that in the league, just based on the amount of attempts that they got up, and how they can punish indecision in the splits or in screens and switch scenarios. There's been a couple situations, especially in the Boston games in this series, where just a slight miscommunication or a slight delay in a switch, and a guy like Derek White can punish them just by stepping back and taking a three. So it's especially been really sharp the last couple of games, and it is, again, helped keep the Magic in this series, helped give them a little bit of extra life in the
unbelievable
series. So,
yeah, because you figured they were going to break out at some point, and that might happen in Game 5. Maybe it's just a 3-point barrage.
The defense the Magic have played has been the Magic's defense has been far and away the most impressive factor, and honestly, I know you mentioned that a lot of Boston's probably looking to a team like Oklahoma City that has a lot of the same principles, has a lot of the same personnel factors, probably just a little bit better players in those roles than Orlando does. Like, this is an awesome test to get to see in the first round for Boston to,
I agree,
maybe put together some film and figure out a scheme fix for that, because obviously I think Oklahoma City would be a lot better at punishing some of these discrepancies that the Celtics have had than Orlando has been.
For sure. And I think you're a little worried if you're Boston, in that you haven't faced or fared great offensively against that kind of defense. Obviously, they went 0-2 against Oklahoma City during the year, and they wouldn't have home court in that series. So I think there's a lot of stuff you look at there and say, ooh, like that's going to be tough if it comes to it. And obviously, it's way down the line here. The biggest issue, though, for Boston coming out of this one is that they're so banged up. And I'm glad to see Tatum's not on the injury report after tweaking that wrist, it looked like last night. Jalen's just been a constant on there and hasn't looked quite like himself in this series. And now, of course, Holiday. Doesn't feel like we're going to see him in this series for as long as it stretches on here, which is probably the smart move with the room for error that they have in this one. So don't want to come out of a series like this as injured as they've been. And obviously the physical nature of this series has contributed to that. So I understand the fans who are in my mentions who were like, yeah, we probably won Atlanta. It would have just been a little more smooth. It probably would have been over by now. I know the Cavs are about to wrap up their series against the Heat tonight. Probably would have been a 4-0 in those kind of series. But I've loved this. And maybe it's just my enjoyment of, the awesome basketball we've watched here, and just some of the drama and tense moments and how close these games have been. So that might just be selfish on my part. I know the fans probably want an easier ride to the championship like last year, but Celtics are expecting a tougher path. And this is going to be one we look back on, if they do go on to win the championship again this year, that this really prepared them for tougher challenges down the line. I mean, this series to me has been tougher than any they played last year, except for that Indiana one. And that's amazing to think about, with Suggs out, with Mo out, with just how lackluster at times the Magic looked and having to play into the playoffs, the fact that they've given them this kind of challenge, really unique. So do they have one more in them? What kind of game are we looking at tomorrow night?
That's a great question. I think honestly, this whole time I've had the gentleman suite idea in my mind that the Magic were going to take one of the two at home, and not be able to win one at TD Garden. I just think that there's too much that has to go right for the Magic in this series in a particular game to win. And it felt like really in Game 3 they played the most like themselves. In Game 4, up until the last 4 minutes, they played the most like themselves, and they did all of that in Game 3 for a 2-point win. And they played 44 really good minutes in Game 4, and they lost by 9 because they didn't play well in the last 4. The margin for error for Orlando, given everything that they're missing, is so slim. Boston has so much that it can go to. And again, I'm fully with you. You don't want to see, anybody that's a basketball purist that just is in the best interest of the game. You don't want to see Boston come out of this as banged up as they have been. And part of that is the Magic's physicality. Part of that is some harsh luck. I would feel like,
I still
I'm
don't know
not
what
exactly
happened
sure,
with
but
Holiday.
I
Yeah.
was just about to ask. I don't know what happened with Holiday's hamstring.
I went
And I
back
know
and watched
Jalen
that
had
whole
the
game. He finished the game, played the final
yeah
12 minutes, was driving to the rim with 30 seconds left. Didn't look like anything happened there. So, yeah, I don't know if that was between games. Joe didn't really clarify that. But, yeah, that's been a weird one the last handful of games here. And they've needed him. They will need him next round, I think, against New York, if that's what it's going to be at this point. So, yeah, I have a feeling the next game is going to be that breakout for Boston. I felt like this was going to be a 6-game series going in, but I think that was their opportunity to do that in Game 4 that the Magic couldn't take advantage of there. So
I agree with
we'll
you.
see. I wouldn't be surprised if it looks like every other game that we've watched this series either, because like you said to start the show, they've all looked the same at the start of this one. So, we were in the locker room after the game yesterday. We were checking in on the Orlando side of things, and you and some of the other Magic reporters there were saying, this probably won't be the last time we see these two teams play here. And, I have a lot of respect for that Magic team, and I think it looks like they're about to grow into something legit here in the East. There's a lot of room. You see what's going on with Milwaukee and what Indiana's been able to do the last couple of years, and just how many rebuilding teams are in the East. It feels like there's a real opportunity here for a healthy Magic team to become a factor in this conference, especially maybe nail another draft pick. Maybe you swing a move for a significant piece here, or these guys just continue to grow into stars, in Paolo and Franz and Suggs, who, had such a injury-riddled season in his own right there. What's the big picture look like for this team? Say they do lose tomorrow, losing 5 here. How are they looking at this season, and what's the next step for them?
It's a very big off season for this Magic team, regardless of what happens the rest of this series, regardless of what happens the rest of these playoffs, just because of the fact that Paolo and Franz's extension kicks in next year, as does Suggs, and Paolo will sign. Assuming all goes well, Paolo signs his rookie max extension this offseason to kick in the season after that. This team gets very expensive around those 3 guys very quickly. And it's a matter of, they know that they have their 2 guys. They know that they have a really solid third option in Suggs. And it's on the front office now to build the team that can contend around them and capitalize on, like you said, what the East is right now, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. The East is wide open for a team like Indiana that has in the last couple of years. for a team like Orlando, if it could stay healthy, to really burst in, make a ton of noise, and stay there for a few years. And maybe no team in the East kind of bubbling around region is well positioned better than the Magic are to do that because of the talent they already have on the roster. So um, I think it's a really huge, really crucial offseason for the Magic to get right. Whether it's swinging for a more playmaking, a more scoring usage guard, whether it's shoring up a little bit at the big man position, getting some more consistent production out of that, or seeing if you can try to find an upgrade here or there. But I think, like I said earlier, this playoff series, this experience of playing against Boston, playing against the champs, knowing that they can go toe to toe with them right now, even in the state that they are, that has to be confidence building. That has to be ammunition to go into this offseason and capitalize on that going forward. And I think it's going to pay dividends for both teams in the long run, honestly, throughout this series.
Yeah, and I wonder who it is. It was KCP last summer. Didn't work out as you would have expected it to, at least in year one here. And then you look at the free agent list and potential guys who are available this summer. It's not a ton. I thought they maybe should have taken a look at Mitchell when Cleveland acquired him a couple years ago. I thought they should have maybe taken a look at Lillard, last summer, and blessings to him with everything he's gone through this year, and obviously the injury now too, just brutal over the last day here. And now you're looking at Giannis. Is there any universe where that's even a possibility for Orlando?
It becomes a question of that's a fun discussion of who in the league would you not trade for Giannis, right? Is Paolo on that list? Probably. Is Franz on that list? I don't know. Is anybody else besides Paolo on that list for the Magic? That's a fun discussion you can have. They certainly have all of their draft picks
Could you
available to do
imagine
so.
how
If they
well
were
he'd
to,
fit in with this culture and this play style? And
oh man, it doesn't solve the guard problem by any means, but you have
just
the
lean in, no
best ball
shooting.
rocking. Yeah, you
Yeah.
just have the best uh home, I don't even know, wrecking ball front court you can have with Paolo and Franz. He's one of the few guys in the league where you could put Paolo alongside of him, and Paolo is not the more ball dominant force driving towards the rim in the league. He might be the only guy, honestly, at this point in the league. I I don't know what that sort of reality would look like. I don't know how many of those firsts that they would have to give up for that. I think honestly the route they would go if they were to swing big is a guard.
Yeah.
I think in the offseason they really took an experiment, took a swing on Jalen Suggs being their point guard this year. And I think this year has kind of revealed to me more than anything that when he was healthy, he's really a solid two guard. He can still be the point of attack defender, and really anchor the defense at the head of the snake. But I also think that they would benefit from having a guy that is a more proven passer, who can go hunt his own shot as well, because they need some offensive creation as well, just to help mitigate what they have struggled with the last 10 or 12 years. I think it's been 13 years they've had, as 13 straight years they've had a bottom 10 offensive rating. And now some of those mid 2010s years were really, really rough for the Magic, but things are looking up for them right now. You've got two of the best players, already one of your best teammate duos in franchise history on the roster right now, and they're 22 and 23 years old. You've got to capitalize on that if you're the Magic. So it's a big offseason for the front office. We'll get a lot of answers hopefully out of the front office during exit interviews whenever those come. But it is, I think this is probably
It's
in
time for them to
conversation
make a
for the
move.
most, probably in conversation for the most monumental offseason the franchise has maybe ever seen, if they're gonna really catapult themselves into year after year contending.
Yeah, I think we'll all be interested to watch it now that there's some relationship between these two teams and history, maybe a little bit of a budding rivalry here coming out of this series. I don't think anyone could have expected it to be as combustible as it's been here, but it's been a lot of fun and might wrap up tomorrow. Game 5 is 8:30. Get ready for a late one here in Boston. Mason's got an early morning. I appreciate him hanging out with us a little longer here and getting ready for the trip tomorrow. We'll let you go here and get some rest, man. And great to have you on the show here for the first time.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's that 8:30 tip off is going to be brutal for all of us, I'm assuming. But
Is it ESPN?
I think it's NBA TV tomorrow. NBA TV and then the local broadcast have their own stuff as well. So
All right, so that gives us hope for at least starting closer to game time, because we
Yeah.
know it'll be 8:40-ish.
right,
actually,
right.
by the time
And
it
if
gets
it was
going there.
ESPN, it'd be 8:45, and if it was TNT, it would be something like 8:35, something like that. So, like you said, we've got some
These have
hope
been
for a little bit
long
earlier tip off.
games. These have
That's
been long
the
games
Magic
so
play the
far.
longest. Magic have played the longest games all year. They played the longest games throughout the regular season. Game 3 was the longest game of the year. I don't know if you saw the third quarter last night. In Game 4 took 51 minutes.
Wow.
It is, they foul a ton. They go to the line. It slows the game down. Everything else that's gone on in this series, like it's just been par for the course in that sense. But yes, very long games is Magic basketball. So
Check out his work. He's over on the Twitter machine, Mason Williams, MVSON Williams, over on Twitter, and check out his work over on SI. Anything else you want to shout out, man?
no, man, I appreciate you having me on. This has been fun.
All right. Check out his coverage tomorrow. Check out our coverage of the game here. Post game coming up live after game 5, 8:30 tip off. And we'll have all the updates from the game over at the Garden tomorrow night. Thanks again to Mason for previewing it all with us. Check out Prize Picks. Use the code CLNS over there to get 50 when you play 5. Check out Game Time for your tickets tomorrow night and all summer long to your events. Use CLNS for $20 off your first purchase over there. Terms apply. And check out LinkedIn Jobs. Go over there, linkedin.com/Garden, post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. That's it for us tonight. Again, Drew Holiday's out tomorrow. Jalen questionable again. Tip off 8:30. We will talk to you then. Peace.
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're going to do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have
Say
to
it.
feel
You
that
said
way.
it.
Let's fly Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We are not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke